And now, welcome again, Jonas.
Thank you.
On the topic of traceability.
Yes.
I was waiting for you to. Take it away.
Well, I didn't get it. I prepared for this presentation by not sleeping last night because I have a 3-year-old. So, and this is sort of hour of death right after lunch. So, let's see if I'm still awake after these 20 minutes. Yes, transparency and traceability tools for textile value chains. This is an overview of all the different transparency and traceability tools that are out there. This overview is done by Joel Svedlund at Peak 63 for circular movement. The background to this, why we did this, was I'm also working in the Textile Fashion 2030 project, and we are guiding SME companies on sustainability. And one question that often came up was, so what tools do we have for transparency and traceability? And it was really difficult to guide them. So we decided to create this overview. So what is transparency and traceability? Well, traceability, I would assume most people think comes first, because it's difficult to be transparent without traceability. So, but this describes the process to trace origin, movement, and build-up of products and material. Normally, when we speak about traceability, we look backwards up to tier 4, but I assume it becomes more and more relevant to also look forward to trace garments in the end of life cycles and in the recycling and reuse processes. Transparency then is communication of information to customers and other stakeholders, and that is the information that you find in your process. There are some differences: manual and digital traceability. Manual traceability, we usually say that it's to collect, manage, and share traceability data through phone calls, email, manual input into Excel sheets, etc. Very, labor intensive. Whereas the digital traceability, the black box for transparency, is sort of a version of that. Data is collected, managed, and shared with the digital systems where data is entered by the data owner and shared in connected automated systems. This is more, right now, I don't think there is one system that is doing this in a really good way, but there are many systems that are doing and building up to become this. We also have different levels of traceability. The first one, where you sort of map your suppliers. The second one, where you trace all the way back to product. The third one, material traceability. And the fourth level, ingredient process traceability. And as traceability becomes more granular, you also need to use more automated systems, we assume, because it becomes much more expensive to trace every item all the way back. So this is also one of the applications of this tool, this black box for transparency. So what does this traceability data ecosystem look like? Well, normally when our systems that we have in companies, these are the product and PDM and PLM systems. Those are managing product information. We have our supply chain management systems. We have vendor management systems and ERP systems. Those are normally within the company. Then there are different types of systems that enter data, sustainability data, into those systems. And here we exemplify that with the different HIG modules, like HIG Factory Environmental Module, HIG Factory Social and Labor Module, and the CDHC Gateway, which is dealing with chemistry. Behind that is supplier data from any tier in the supply chain. And then facing consumer is, for product information management systems, PIM systems, and web shops. And then you have the retailer there. And the traceability tools usually deal with what you see here in the middle of this ecosystem. Some go further back, some doesn't include everything. And down there you have, of course, the different applications of this data. Traceability, it is key to comply with upcoming legislation and policies. These are a few examples where probably the digital product passport is on top of everybody's mind right now. But there are others. There is the EU textile strategy. There is the eco-design for sustainable products. You have the empowering consumers and substantiating green claims initiative. The corporate sustainability due diligence that also requires a lot of traceability. And for example, deforestation-free products. And there are many, many more. I think there are at least 16 different laws cooking right now that will come in the next couple of years. And then there's an additional 15, 16 that will be until 2030. So in this map, in this mapping, we found 80 plus tools, many tools, that were applicable then for apparel and textiles. And we did a global overview of these tools. The tools were focused on supply chain management or on the supply chain. They should be commercially available. There are lots of tools that are promoted as commercially available, but they are just ideas at this stage. And they should have some kind of digital platforms, and they should be able to handle common certifications. So very challenging for anybody to guide among these tools. Which tool is best then? I guess that's the question. But the problem here is that there are so many tools, and I would say all of the tools almost, they say, we help you with transparency, traceability, and the EU taxonomy and the digital product passport. So that's sort of, you can get help, but then when you dig a little bit deeper, they are very different. So they will help in very different ways. So it's very difficult to navigate and to find out which one is best. So this is the first challenge to understand what the tools do, because it's not, these companies aren't very transparent about the transparency. Let's say it like that. There is no clear categories of tools. We have a list of all the tools that is available online at the end, so you can get it. There is no standardized language between suppliers, so anybody can talk about traceability or transparency and mean very different things. There are over 200 different marketing expressions that explains what these tools do. And most propose a demo as a first step, and this makes it very difficult for anybody who wants to have a tool to understand what does this cost, is it relevant for us to approach that company, and it's very difficult to get an overview of how does it work. But this is how it's done right now. And there is no information about compatibility with existing systems. Do they have APIs, etc. Also very important right now is, can they manage digital product passports? And the three most common answers are there's no info, or yes, that we are completely DPP compliant, and then you can just assume that they're not, because very few people know what DPP will be like. Then some say, yeah, we follow DPP closely, and which is sort of better. But then you have the best is, of course, if that tool, if they have joined, for example, Serpas, and that they are involved in the development of the DPP. So the traceability challenge then, how do we navigate? So you will have to sort of understand what type of data to track. You have to understand how far back in the supply chain do you have to track. And it's not, well, if you read the suggestions for the different laws, you don't have to trace everything back to raw material, but there are some, but you still have to trace some back. So it differs depending on what you want to measure, what you need to trace. What type of verifications requirements do you have as a brand towards your suppliers? Or if what kind of certifications are there, and what does the certificate require? Are there systems for sharing data? For who and how should the data be presented? So what application of the data are always foreseeing? Other factors also include the size of your company. Maybe at this point it's not necessary to have a really good tool. So you can wait if you're a smaller one. But if you're a bigger one, you should probably get going right now. Do you have your own retail operations? Do you have your own production? Do you deal with non-textile products? And are you developing a circular business model, for example? So how to go about when purchasing a traceability tool? Well, 4 very easy steps. Number 1, define your traceability tool needs. Number 2, identify possible tool options. Number 3, compare the different tool options. And this is what we help you with this report. We have identified the options. And then decide and implement your tool. And there are essentially 4 main types of tools for traceability. These are supply chain mapping systems, product, material, and traceability systems, physical tracing technologies, and PDM and PLM systems. So if you want to read a bit more, get your copy of the short version of the report. It's somewhere here. Yeah, Annette has them over there, and they are on the tables. So get your copy. And also here you have the guidance report on the left, and you have the list on the right. And I think that this should be on LinkedIn or published on Science Park also. Oh, it's on the it's on the here as well. The QR codes, so you can scan it through there. Thank you very much.
I'm thinking.
Do you want to ask if there are questions?
I was gonna ask. So what are they? Which is the best?
Oh no, I don't know.
You don't know? No. So obviously, what you mentioned is that this is really important for coming legislation.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's also very good to have, like a good resource to have for companies when it comes to finding the best tool. It's it's a jungle.
Yes, it is.
Welcome to the jungle.
Yeah.
So anything else you'd like to add when it comes to any personal tips to the audience when it comes to choosing the right tools? If we're talking less report, more feelings.
There are tons of tools, but I think that the most important thing is that they really help you with your transparency and traceability, because there are tools for transparency and traceability that doesn't help with that. And also be a little bit aware about what do they do. So there are some examples. So you have so when we started to look at this, we saw that some of the suppliers, they only offer a very expensive folder structure. That's it. You will have to get the information on your own. You have to fill it. You have to put it on your own. So the only thing they did was that you pay a lot of money for a folder structure. Then there are and it doesn't really help you with anything. And then there are the ones that do a lot more. Yeah, I suppose more expensive ones, but they do more. Yeah, they help with calculations, and they help with getting primary data might help you with strategies and things like that as well.
Hmm.
So yeah. So, but this list is there to help out with sort of identifying which are the better ones.
Yeah. And in terms of companies making like in this decision process, how would you say to value what both the company is looking for and finding out about their value chain with adhering to the common legislation? So on either side, you've got, we want to find out this about our value chain, and this is what the EU demands.
Oh yeah, finding that good balance.
Yeah.
If there are any tools that does that better?
No, or what would you say? Well, is there like during this report and this is analysis that you found? I mean, sometimes it's easy to just do things to abide the law, but you also can gather some pretty interesting information.
And exactly, and one good way of using these tools is also to identify where are the risks in your supply chain. So, and then you can reduce those risks. And normally that means also, making more money. Yeah,
exactly.
I think there was a report from that companies who have better traceability in their supply chain, they usually make more money because they know what's going on in their supply chain. So it's sort of likhetstecken, whatever that is in English, between those two. So, but it's of course very case specific. But definitely one that helps out with that does help you with transparency.
Yeah. Great. Do we have any questions for Jonas from the audience? No? Well, warm applause to Jonas. Thank you very much.